in debt. My colleagues on the other side
the gentleman, are you advocating defunding the police? That's who this is for.
What I'm advocating for is allowing the police powers of the states
to be comment requirements, and at least not officially, does not have the force of law, or at least shouldn't have the force of law. Yet we have seen
Chip Roy and Harriet Hageman left Jerry Nadler completely speechless in Congress after exposing his hypocrisy and failures. In this explosive moment, two fearless conservatives took on one of the most powerful Democrats and left him with no defense. Watch as Roy and Hageman stand up for truth, the Constitution, and the American people.
Opposition.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as agency heads have stated time and time again, guidance documents, general statements of policy, and other agency guidance do not have the force and effect of law, and the agencies do not take enforcement actions
appropriate, or it wouldn't happen. I can't remember the exact wording for states to be able to take care of this particular problem. The gentlelady from Texas the gentlelady from Texas had an exact quote.
Actually, if the gentleman yields, the state of Texas just unanimously passed active shooter alert and signed by Governor Abbott.
Reclaiming my time. Great. My point is, the gentlelady from Texas was talking about the inability of states to carry out the law enforcement function. And the specific, as you literally said the quote, is why I got up out of my office and walked down here, as you literally said it. And my point is here we're talking about, federal spending, and the gentleman just said, well, Texas just passed this. Well, good for Texas, right? But we just act like there's this unlimited slush fund in this town to say we're going to go straight. I know, there he goes again talking about spending. We're talking about, so $2 million, $50 million, $5 billion. Does it matter? Right, when we're $30.5 trillion in debt? My colleagues on the other side
the gentleman, are you advocating defunding the police? That's who this is for.
What I'm advocating for is allowing the police powers of the states to be able to do the job of the states, which is to police the states. Like, that's the whole point. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they go hide behind this and say, we're not defunding the police because you guys have some bill in here for a grant program, because the idea of the grant program is to then go micromanage what the states have to go do. Because that's the purpose of what you want to do. You want to use the federal money, the power and the coercion of the federal government to go tell states what they must do. And you want to do it with borrowed money. You want to do it with printed money.
Would the gentleman yield?
Not just yet. You want to do it with borrowed and printed money. Because that's what we do in this town. We go write blank checks because we want to go give a press conference about all the greatness that we're doing in this town. All of the awesome things that we're accomplishing. Meanwhile, you states, you say, well, are they going to do this or not? Well, they actually have to make a tough choice because they actually have to balance a budget. They actually have to decide, are we going to spend money in a school? Are we going to spend money on teachers? But in this case, what we do is we say, we'll write a blank check. And then my colleagues say, well, we're not defunding the police. But yet it is Democrats across the country that are clearly defunding the police. Austin, Texas, which I represent, $150 million slashed from the budget. People are waiting. They call 911. They can't get through. They're trying to get police. Police aren't trained. The very schools, the police are not actually being recruited now because we don't have the money to recruit them. Why? Because Democrats in the progressive, quote-unquote, oasis of Austin, Texas, stopped funding the police. I could go list by list here. Minneapolis, cutting their budget. New York City, cutting their budget. Cook County, Illinois, Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas, Baltimore, Maryland, Los Angeles, California, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, all slashed their budget, cut police budgets. And now my Democratic colleagues want to say, oh, in our infinite...
House Resolution 495, the gentlewoman from Wyoming, Ms. Hageman, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Wyoming.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. The Separation of Powers Restoration Act, or SOPRA, is great legislation which I fully support. My amendment is simple and seeks to clarify that de novo judicial review applies to agency guidance as well as to agency rules and congressional statutes. Specifically, my amendment explicitly states that interpretive rules, general statements of policy, and all other agency guidance are subject to de novo judicial review. Unlike rules, guidance is undefined in the APA's definition section. Agency guidance consists of interpretive rules that explain how agencies interpret the statutes and rules that they administer, and general statements of policy that prospectively advise how agencies may choose to exercise their authority. Guidance is not subject to the APA's notice and comment requirements, and, at least not officially, does not have the force of law, or at least shouldn't have the force of law. Yet we have seen a growing trend of the administrative agencies attempting to use guidance to have the force of law, while at the same time avoiding even the APA process. For example, in my private capacity before being elected to Congress, I was part of an effort to push back on the Department of Agriculture's attempt to mandate RFID ear tags on the cattle and bison of our nation's ranchers. The agency tried to force this on the agriculture community through a 2-page guidance document that was posted to the USDA website. This circumventing of the congressional, legislative, and agency rulemaking process would have cost our cattle producers $2 billion to comply with this guidance, all without a single comment or public hearing. Further concerning is that guidance is often not judicially reviewable because agencies then claim that it is not final agency action. And even when it is reviewed, the government then asks for deference to the agencies by the courts. While the language in SOPR is implicit that the requirement for de novo judicial review of all relevant questions of law applies to agency guidance, my amendment would make it explicit. In closing, my amendment would clarify that agency guidance, which agencies routinely abuse, is subject to de novo judicial review under the
Patriots, what we just witnessed in Congress was nothing short of legendary. Chip Roy and Harriet Hageman teamed up and absolutely obliterated Jerry Nadler. And here's the best part. Nadler had no comeback, no defense, no words. He was left sitting there, completely speechless. That's how powerful this exchange was. Now let's break it down, because this wasn't just about scoring points in a hearing. This was about truth, accountability, and exposing how Democrats like Jerry Nadler have been running this country into the ground. First, Chip Roy. If you've been watching him, you know he doesn't play games. He came into that hearing prepared, armed with facts, and ready to go toe-to-toe with Nadler. And what did he do? He laid out, point by point, the disaster at our southern border. He talked about the lives lost, the drugs pouring in, the cartels gaining more power while Americans suffer. And when Roy looked Nadler straight in the eye and demanded answers, what did Nadler do? Nothing. Silence. That's because there are no answers. How do you defend policies that are destroying American communities? You can't. Then Harriet Hageman stepped up. And folks, let me just say this. She is quickly becoming one of the most fearless conservative voices in Congress. She doesn't mince words, and she doesn't back down. She exposed Nadler for exactly what he is, a career politician more interested in protecting Joe Biden and the Democrat establishment than protecting the American people. She talked about the rule of law, about how Democrats have bent and twisted it to protect their own interests while ignoring the suffering of everyday Americans. Her words cut through the noise like a sword. And here's where it gets good. Nadler had no reply. This is a man who has spent decades running his mouth, covering for Democrats, and defending corruption. But when faced with the truth, when confronted by two patriots who refused to let him dodge, he froze. He was left with nothing but that blank look we've all seen too many times before. That silence said more than any argument ever could. It was the silence of defeat. The silence of a politician who knows the truth is no longer on his side. And let's be honest, Jerry Nadler represents everything that's wrong with Washington. He's been there forever, clinging to power, protecting the swamp, and ignoring the will of the American people. But today, thanks to Chip Roy and Harriet Hageman, Americans got to see him exposed.
That's the whole point.
They got to see what happens when you strip away the talking points and force a career Democrat to face reality. And let me tell you, it was a beautiful sight. This moment wasn't just about embarrassing Nadler. It was about showing America that we do have leaders who are willing to fight. Chip Roy and Harriet Hageman didn't just speak for themselves. They spoke for every American who was tired of being lied to. They spoke for the border towns overwhelmed by illegal crossings. They spoke for the families devastated by fentanyl. They
Because
spoke
that's
for
what
every
we do in this
citizen
town.
who feels
We
ignored
go write
while
blank
Washington
checks
politicians take
because we
care of
want to go
themselves.
give a press
And this
conference
is
about all
exactly
the
why the
greatness
left
that
hates
we're doing
fighters
in this
like
town.
Roy
All of
and
the awesome
Hageman.
things that we're
Because
accomplishing.
when they speak,
Meanwhile,
people
you
listen.
states, you say,
They're
well,
not controlled
are
by
they
the
going to do this
lobbyists.
or not?
They're
Well,
not
they actually
afraid of
have
the
to make a
media,
tough choice.
and they don't bow
because
to
they
the
actually have
swamp.
to balance a budget.
They stand on
They actually have
principle,
to decide.
and when you do
Are we going
that,
to spend
you
money
leave
in a
people
school?
like Jerry
Are we going to
Nadler
spend
with
money
nothing
on
to say.
teachers? But
So
in this case,
here's the big
what we
takeaway.
do is we
The
say we'll
cracks
write a
in the
blank check.
Democrat
And then my
stronghold
colleagues
are
say, well,
showing.
we're not defunding
Every
the police.
time the truth
but
is
yet it
spoken
is
in that
Democrats
chamber,
across the country
every time a
that are
patriot calls out the corruption,
clearly
the
defunding
silence
the
from
police.
people like Nadler
Austin,
grows
Texas,
louder.
which I represent,
They're running out of
$150
excuses,
million
they're
slashed in
running
the
out of
budget.
spin,
People are
and
waiting
they're
to
running
call
out of
911.
time.
They can't get through.
America
They're trying to get
is
police.
waking up.
Police aren't trained.
We're seeing who's
The very,
willing to fight for us
schools,
and
you
who's
know,
willing to sell us
the
out.
police are not
And after
actually
today,
being recruited
it's
now
crystal
because we don't
clear.
have the money to
Chip
recruit them.
Roy and Harriet
Why?
Hageman
Because
are fighters.
Democrats in
Jerry
the
Nadler,
progressive quote
he's
unquote
just
oasis
another
of
empty
Austin,
suit
Texas,
clinging to power.
stopped funding the
Patriots,
police.
if this
I
doesn't
could go
fire
list
you
by
up, I
list
don't know
here
what will.
of Minneapolis
Because
cutting their
what we
budget,
saw
New York
today
City,
wasn't just a
cutting
debate.
their budget.
It was a
Cook
glimpse
County,
of the
Illinois,
future.
Portland,
A
Oregon,
future
Austin,
where
Texas,
truth
Baltimore,
beats
Maryland,
corruption,
Los Angeles,
where
California,
courage beats
Milwaukee,
cowardice,
Philadelphia,
and where
all
patriots beat
slashed their
politicians.
budgets. Cut
Stay
police
tuned,
budgets.
because this
And now my
battle
Democratic
isn't
colleagues
over.
want to say,
This is
oh,
just the beginning.
in our infinite